Explain what Proposition 25 was.
Yeah, so proposition is it's the referendum. So basically, the way referendums work in California is basically they've passed a law and then they're putting the law in front of the voters to say, do you want this law or do you not want this law? And so it's a no vote. Okay.
But what was Prop 25? I don't really understand. Is it like a single sentence on a ballot? Is it like
no? They wrote a paragraph that explains it, and so we don't write it. The other side kind of gets to write it. Well, so I think it's the Secretary of State's office, but they write it, and then we basically just can make comments, and then they're either going to listen or not. But it's Proposition 25, and before it you had Proposition 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. They all have a title, and then they all have a short paragraph description of what it is, and then you could vote no or you vote yes. And so all of that stuff's kind of out of our control. I think we got lucky is that they probably could have been a lot worse than how they described it. But the description was definitely in their favor of replacing an unfair money bail system with a system that relies not on the amount of money you have, but on the amount of risk you pose, which isn't really the best description in terms of what they were offering. But I think that it could have been worse, but I think that the description is something we just had to work with. But I think the most important thing that we did as part of this fight was the coalition building, because the reality is, like I said, it's like this isn't just a bail issue. I mean, this is just an industry issue. Yeah, everyone talks about how you'd put the bail industry out, like there'd be no more jobs in California for bail agents. They basically have been replaced with people that work for the probation and parole departments. But it was more than that. I mean, there was huge impacts to public safety, huge impacts to the accountability of people, even whether they're going to show up or not, huge impacts to kind of the infrastructure of who's going to organize and set up. I mean, you think about it, you're taking 15,000 bail agents and overnight they're gone. Well, who's going to handle the work that all those bail agents did? You have to replace that with all these people. You got to teach them. You have to create a system to be able to organize it. It's a crazy idea to think that was going to happen as quick as it was, and the amount of money it was going to cost. I mean, you got to remember, for people that don't know what we do for a living, it doesn't cost the government anything. I mean, we are a service that's paid for by the people that are using that service. It's not like the government gives us money whether people get out or not. And so they waste no money by utilizing us. So by actually going to the system, they're spending more money than they would have if they just let us to do what we do. And so I think that was an issue that people didn't like. And while all this was going on, which I think was probably pretty helpful, is that other states had tried bail reform. I mean, New York passed it in their budget at the beginning of 2019, and it passed and then it went into effect at the beginning of 2020. And within 4 months, they turned it around. It was a complete and utter catastrophe. And for the first time, a major media market responded to failed bail reform. And what we saw was article after article, mention after mention on every single news program every night about the increased crime, about the failures of bail reform, about these people that they were just letting out of jail with no accountability. It was unbelievable to see what happened. And I think everyone here in California was sitting back saying, well, why would we do that? We get to watch this movie from afar. And so I think that helped fuel a lot of the push in our direction on Prop 25 when all this other stuff was going on out around the country. I mean, even all the chaos that happened over the summer with the protests and all these things. I just think a lot of people were kind of sick and tired of what was going on. And I think that fueled some of the support for us at that time. But it was really a coalition. Law enforcement stepped up. Victim advocates stepped up. You had retail associations that were stepping up because the increase in crime and people, shoplifting from them, they're losing, tons and tons and tons of merchandise. And then, when you started having people look into the risk assessments and SB 10s, how they were incorporated into SB 10, you begin to have the NAACP begin to kind of come out against it. I think BLM at one point came out publicly, and they had some campaigns against it. So there was a lot of these social justice groups started realizing this was a good law. So when you hear Senator Hertzberg, say that, the bail industry confused people into voting no, or people didn't understand what they were voting no against. And it's just not true. There's enough people understood how bad this bill was that they had to vote no. And the results of the outcome of the election, tells you that. I mean, I think there's 58 counties in California, and I think we won all but 9 counties or 8 counties. And I think, the final total was 56% to 44%. I mean, 12 points is a huge margin of victory. And to do something that's only been done a handful of times in the history of your state, I mean, people don't understand the magnitude of that decision, by the voters. Once again, this isn't a bail industry paying billions of dollars to people and confuse. This was the bail industry who was outspent probably 3 to 1. Okay, and it was just people understood this was bad legislation, and we just helped them get the word out and made them aware of it. And not only has a referendum's been successful, I think only 29 times, but I think the statistic I just recently saw is 2/3 of every referendum effort ever done, the person that spends the most money wins. And I might have just referenced, I think 2/3 of any campaign run, 2/3 of the time, the person who ever spends the most money wins. So we spent less money and did something that's rarely been done in the state of California. I think that's a testament to not only, I think, the organization and I think the efforts of our industry, but even bigger, that this was just bad legislation, and it gives you good feelings to know that the public is smart enough to see it and step up and vote it down.
Yeah, I remember from the bail bonds convention, the number 2.2 million votes in excess of what was needed in order that were saying no to Proposition 25. So then the Senate bill would never go into actual action. So that's a pretty healthy margin. 2.2 million people, and especially in the state of California. It's a big state, but 2.2 million people is still a pretty healthy margin. And